We are ready to rock. Good morning, everybody. Thanks to those of you that have joined us. I know we'll probably have a few more people rolling in. If you do have to drop or anything like that, you might have seen a little notification at the top of the screen here. We are recording this session, so any questions or anything like that, we'll certainly try and address as we go through here. But welcome to Nutanix at 9. Today we're going to be talking about the perks of Prism Pro. We've got a pretty straightforward agenda, I think. We don't have too much ground to cover, but we have a lot of content to cover. So I'll go ahead and get us started here and tell you kind of how we're going to do it. So out of the gate, right, got a few people on the screen. We'll do some quick introductions as well as a background on Egroup for those of you that might not know who we are. Just a few Nutanix updates that we'll touch on, but really what I think most of y'all are here for today is the technical demonstration. So we've got a lot to review on really that highest tier of Prism, and that's what we're going to spend a lot of our time going through today. We've got the ability to kind of show you what you can do with it. We'll have the GUI up. So really, like I said, if you've got questions throughout this, we've got the chat box open. We'll have our eyes on it and really encourage anything that you want to see to be thrown out there so that we can make this good for you all that have joined us today. At the end, you see we've got the Egroup Data Center Modernization Assessment. I'll just kind of run through very quickly on how you can engage with Egroup to apply some of the concepts that we talk about today. We've got an entire practice dedicated to Nutanix, as you can tell by our nice backgrounds here. We're very serious about our partnership with Nutanix. But yeah, let's go ahead and get rolling with the introduction. So my name is Dan Drood. I'm an account exec here at Egroup. I've been focused on Nutanix for quite a while, but really the bulk of today is going to be covered by our specialists here, and they deserve their own slide right up next to the Egroup Champion Global Portfolio Champion of the Year Award. Paul and Mike, do you guys mind just doing a quick introduction on kind of your background, who you are, any fun facts that you feel like throwing out to the world that will be recorded on YouTube?
Absolutely. Paul, you're the special guest. Go ahead and lead us in.
Appreciate it. So good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Nguyen, Senior SC here at Nutanix. I've been here about 4 or 5 years-ish, so been here quite a while. Interesting fact, I used to live out in Los Angeles for quite a bit. Loved it here in the West Coast, but yeah, East Coast now, and it's starting to get pretty cold, so I'm adjusting for sure.
That it is. Thanks, Paul. So good morning, everybody. Mike Dan, I lead our data center services team here at Egroup, as well as the solutions engineering team. So both pre-sales and post-sales teams. Been with Egroup for, I guess it'll be 9 years this year. Interesting fact, I'll kind of use Paul's geographical description here in South Carolina. We got 2 inches of snow last weekend, and that was the first time in like 6 years I've seen snow. So at least here at home. So it was a little different because we don't have plows and salt and stuff to take care of the roads. So a lot of fun getting around.
A lot of chaos, I'm sure. Paul, I'm gonna throw a fun fact out about you as well. This is like our 8-year reunion. Paul used to be an engineer over at Aperture, for anybody that's familiar with that, and I was one of the sales guys that he had to say, hey Dan, don't say that. Yeah, you got this wrong, and so it's good to kind of circle back on this. I think Nutanix is a really great platform. So good to have you on board here, and thanks again for joining us.
Slide for these days.
Fun times for sure.
Yeah. Good old live recoveries. For those of you that might not know Egroup, just a quick background. We've been around for about 20 years. We are a national solutions provider. We are, like I mentioned on the earlier slide, Nutanix's kind of global portfolio champion. And really what that means is that we just have the strongest grasp on the entire portfolio of Nutanix. So those of you familiar with Nutanix, they are not just a core infrastructure provider. They have database solutions, security solutions. They've got VDI as a service. We just have the in-house talent to be able to kind of take you start to finish through an entire evaluation, implementation, and even be able to support that technology, A to Z. So it's a really strong focus for us. We've been able to deliver exceptional results for our customers because it is a very easy to manage technology. Really, a lot of the software takes on a lot of the workload for you. And so that's been a big part of our success. We like providing our customers with successful solutions, calling out the support as well. I mean, it's great to be able to sell a technology that has a top-notch support team because that makes it easier for us as the provider, but also even more easier for the customer. And I think that is probably even more important these days as we kind of see the commoditization of hardware and various software solutions. In terms of kind of our reach, we've got over 400 customers across the country. We focus on industries that have, those high compliance needs, those high SLAs. They are very particular about their technology. Those are customers that we align very well with. So if you have any questions about Egroup in general, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. We'll probably get to those maybe at the end if there's anything. But we're always happy to kind of talk about the broader practice outside of what we're doing with Nutanix today. So with that being said, before we get into the actual demonstration today, wanted to run through just two kind of brief updates on the Nutanix platform that are pretty relevant. And if you happen to be a Nutanix user, let us know in the chat, especially if you're using G5 nodes, right? We're going to talk about the G5 nodes today, and then I think we've got just a few tidbits on AOS. But Mike and Paul, anything that you guys wanted to start with around just kind of some quick Nutanix updates?
I'd say kind of jumping in, we've seen kind of a flurry of releases over the last couple of weeks from Nutanix. I guess everybody coming off their holiday break, they put the pedal to the metal on some new releases. So some great stuff there. Some, with AOS releases coming out, there's some great features coming out this year. I know Dan will touch on in a future session some of the newer AOS like 6X functionality that's coming. There's some great performance benefits and performance gains on what they're doing with the VDIS technology and how many readers and writers can be occurring at a given time. We're also seeing calm files. I mean, from the perspective of releases, there's some great stuff that in the first month of the year has already hit that I think is gonna be great to see how they go through this year. Not a lot of details there, I know, but I love seeing the kind of the flurry and the pace of releases that's coming with software right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of partnership announcements with Nutanix. We're partnering pretty heavy with Red Hat with containers. Citrix, we're their number one preferred platform out of Citrix and the VDI. A lot of strategic partnerships are coming out with Nutanix and other vendors, OEM. So a lot of good stuff coming out, a lot of good integrations. 6.1 AOS just came out as well, and we can do future presentation on all those new and cool update with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got one of those coming. I think maybe either next month or the month after, talking about some AOS features. So stand by for that one. But a lot of great stuff coming. A lot of great stuff.
Absolutely. 2022 starting out pretty good.
I think we're definitely seeing if you can't beat them, join them, right? Everybody's jumping on board and like, all right, Nutanix has it going on. So
absolutely
good stuff, guys. So Paul, I know we want to kind of kick it over to you guys if you want to steal the screen here. What we're going to do is dive into the demonstration portion of today. If you guys want to kind of tee it up, I'll have my eye on the chat. So again, if you have any questions, if we need to go back and show you anything, let us know. But really looking forward to what you guys have to show us today around Prism Pro.
Yeah,
and absolutely.
And Paul, I was going to kind of just jump in here. Kind of the topic of today was Prism Pro and really what you get from Prism out of Prism Central, right? I mean, just to kind of recap for everybody, for those that are Nutanix users and those that aren't Nutanix users, right? When you typically buy into the core platform with Nutanix, you've got the AOS licensing, which also has the name of Prism. So there's some confusion there, I think, over the life cycle where I buy Prism Starter, Prism Pro, Prism Ultimate. But that's really, a lot of folks refer to that, I guess, as the AOS side, right? The core platform side. And then as we look to Prism Central, which is our, that centralized management plane, gives us additional features. Then we have some additional license on Prism Starter, Prism Pro, and Prism Ultimate as well that kind of extend the platform and provide the extra capacity or extra features and benefits, right? So today's conversation really is not about the core licensing of the platform, but more about Prism Central and the benefits gained out of Prism Central. As Paul's got Prism Central up on the screen here, what is Prism? If I just want to have Prism Central for that multi-cluster management or for Leap replication, things like that, what can I get just by deploying it, for, let's just call it for free, right? But if I want to take advantage of some of the more advanced features and functionalities, such as, capacity forecasting, being able to say, okay, if I've got this cluster today, and I'm going to add, X amount of workloads to it, what does that recommendation look like? What's my capacity runway? That comes as part of Prism Pro. if I wanted to get into things like application discovery and some anomaly detections or application monitoring, those start to trend into the Prism Ultimate. So today, really, we wanted to focus on kind of what are the benefits with Prism and Prism Pro and Ultimate as it pertains to Prism Central specifically, right? To get you the more advanced features or more benefits, cost control and automation out of the platform itself. So just kind of wanted to tee it up there, Paul, with some, kind of where we're looking at from today's session.
Yeah, absolutely. Great setup for sure. For any of you guys who are familiar with Nutanix, Prism Central, it's going to be similar to how you manage Prism Element. Everything you can do in Prism Element, you can do in Prism Central Pro. Think of Prism Central as the manager of managers. It's going to manage your multiple Prism elements. So just take a quick step back. Prism Element manages a single cluster. Prism Central manages multiple Prism element, which in turns manages multiple clusters. So you can see here, I have 2 clusters running. If you have a large environment, you might have 5, 6, 7, however many clusters you might have. You can manage it all here in the single GUI. Again, it is HTML5, so you can log in whenever you have internet connectivity. It's in my web browser right now. But if you need to be in your Tesla or at home, you can manage your whole entire environment whenever you have internet there. But you can see here, we're on Prism Central. I'm going to go over here to my burger icon, or the 3 stripes. I like to call it burger because I'm a kind of a foodie here. Again, everything you do in Prism Element, you can manage here in Prism Central, and then select which cluster you want to manage. So compute and storage, same thing. I can create a VM right out of Prism Central. So I'm going to create 1 VM here. It's going to tee up to my other presentation. I'm going to simulate kind of a automated IT operation management within Prism Central that you guys get with Prism Central Pro. To do so, I'll build a couple of VMs and then kind of demonstrate that. But you can also see here, I'm building a VM right out of Prism Central and not even logging into Prism Element. So very simple. We like to say 1 click a lot here at Nutanix, but everyone knows it might be 1 or 2 clicks just to log into the console, right? But we say 1 click a lot here. So 1 click, create a VM. I'll take you through a quick wizard here to create that VM for you. So VM name, this is called Egroup VM. CPU, vCPU, let's do 1 for now. But what I do want to highlight here, I'm going to go ahead and give this 3 gigs of memory. And then I'm going to do an automated process where it's going to automatically add 1 more gig of memory here later in the demo. So keep in mind here, the number 3. I'll go ahead and add it to the storage container. And create my VM. Okay, so let me refresh the page. And you can see my Egroup VM there is created within a couple seconds, 1 click or 2 clicks, if you like to call it. But let's go back home here.
Yeah, and Paul, one of the nice things about that is you were able to create that VM again from Prism Central, but you could have directed that creation of that VM to any of the clusters that Prism Central is managing, right? So that's one of the nice features. As you touched on, if you've got multiple clusters, I can do all of my management from that single pane of glass with Prism Central and direct the workloads where I want them to go.
Absolutely, you're correct. Yep. And you can select which cluster you want the VM to reside. If you remember, I selected the container default. Yeah, select what container and which cluster, and it'll house that VM on that cluster specifically that you wanted to house. Before I show XPlay, a couple of things that I want to show beforehand. So Mike alluded to resource planning. So if you guys go under operations, again, this is included in Prism Central Pro. You can actually see a capacity runway. I'm in the demo environment, so you can't see it here. But if it's running a live environment, you can actually see CPU runway, memory runway, or storage runway. Say, for example, we did machine learning in the background, and you're going to run out of memory within the next month or two. It'll allude here for you. Same thing with CPU and storage runway. So you can know ahead of time if you need to add more nodes, grow out horizontally, or add more memory into the system and grow out vertically.
And Paul, I think that's one of the best features that I've been able to kind of capitalize on with Prism Pro for customers is, they've been in the cluster for a number of years, and their environment's growing over time, right? Not necessarily through VM sprawl, but just through holistic growth. But then all of a sudden somebody comes and says, hey, we're going to add 3 SQL servers and 5 or 6 VMs for this new package we're going to deploy a new application. What do I need to do for my cluster? Well, we can look at it from a variety of ways. We can pull in RV tools and kind of mock this up manually or through collector and mock it up manually. But this allows us to say, hey, let's just go ahead and put, if the workloads you're going to be deploying, let's go ahead and put that in and see what that workload's going to look like, right? To your point, do I need to go horizontally with additional nodes, or is it just basically it's going to say, hey, I'm good for CPU, I'm good for storage, let's bump that memory up. So again, it gives the customer a way to kind of be self-sufficient to understand what their cluster is going to do over time and how it's growing or what the needs are going to be, which I think is it's a great feature. A lot of customers that I've used this with specifically knew about it, but they didn't understand the potential of what it actually provided them. They just saw the graphs of what they were, how the cluster was being utilized, never really understood that, hey, if I add some things to it, it's going to let me know exactly what my cluster is going to be doing. So great feature there.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to show this real quick, and I'll dive into what Mike was referring to. If you click on Optimize Resources here, with machine learning, it can also help you optimize what you have currently. So you can also see any over-provisioned VMs that you might have, any inactive VMs that you might want to power off that's not being used to take back resources, any noisy neighbors, any constrained or bully VMs that are hogging resources, you can log in and optimize as well. And again,
you ever over provisions their VMs, right?
all the time. and if this was a live environment, you can see a graph of the utilization optimization here as well. It's showing today, but also can see you can predict from the future. Let me go back here real quick and go over what Mike was referring to. So I think it's very powerful as well. If you go back here and go to scenario. So let's say, for example, you have a project coming up in the next 6 months or a year. But you don't know if it's that new workload you're adding. Is that going to fit into your current environment within the next 12 months? Do you need to expand more? Do you need to shorten out your projects? We can test that ahead of time, right? And see if that new project will fit into the current environment or you need to upgrade from there. So let's say, for example, since most of us are working from home, a lot of companies now are getting a lot of more VDI into their environment. So let's say I know I'm going to add a lot more employees in the next 6 months. Let me reload here. It's freezing up on me. Must be the Virginia cold weather.
Live demos, man. Live demos.
No worries at all. So let's just redo this. So let's say in the next 6 months, I'm going to add more VDI into the existing infrastructure. You can see here you can add any workload you want. If you have more SQL servers that you want to add to your environment, VMs, I'm going to do VDI. And let's say I'm going to add 500 more employees. And will that fit into my current infrastructure, or do I need to adjust? And again, this is for you as a customer to see. So it's not even us as salespeople or Nutanix reps. It's you as a customer that can see this. So you can see here, within targeted 6 months, I'm not going to hit that capacity. I'm way short. So if you hit on recommended, it'll also recommend you which Nutanix server model or appliance that you should go with. But the key thing here is seeing that you're not going to make that cutout in 6 months. So with VDI, it's going to be a lot of stores and a lot of users. It's recommending me 3 nodes of the 8000 series. So you can see here, you can go back to Nutanix rep and kind of request this node and 3 more for that upcoming 6-month project of adding 500 users. So I think it's pretty cool. The machine learning is built in. Again, this is for you as a customer to see. Any questions, concern, comments, please let us know. Put in the chat. I think this is a powerful tool for you as a customer to have and see within Prism Central.
You know, I've also had customers, Paul, use this as a budgeting tool too.
Yep.
Over the next couple of years, right? So, even though the capacity runway I think is limited to 12 months as a target, but again, I can look at this and say, hey, what do I need to budget for next year? Again, as we continue to roll through. So that's been a nice feature as well for folks having this capacity runway, is being able to kind of understand what budgeting might look like for the next year.
Cool. The coolest function I think personally out of Prism Central Pro, that I don't think that many people know about, is an operation that we call XPlay. So XPlay, again, is included in Prism Central Pro. XPlay is automated IT operation management. It's going to automate your process in the background for you, so you can have ease of mind, kind of hands-off approach to your environment. Let's say, for example, you have a VM, but out of nowhere it started hogging a lot of memory. Say, for example, it has 4 gigs of memory, right? And then it hits 4. Usually, if it goes over, the VM either slows down or sometimes it even powers off on its own. You have to go in and then manually add more resources to that VM. Here with automated ITOM, IT Operation Management with XPlay, it can automate that process for you. So it'll notify, it'll trigger an alert, notify you that VM is running out of resources, and it'll automatically add more memory or vCPU into that VM into a limit or parameters that you set, so that nothing slows down or boggles down in your environment. Again, it'll trigger alert. You get email, you get notified. You can set parameters so it doesn't keep adding more and more resources to that VM and it explodes, right? But it's pretty neat. It saves you a lot of time. It automates that process. And there's so many different things you can do with XPlay in IT operation management automation. But the one thing that I will show today as a quick demo is adding that memory capacity that I just alluded to. So Playbook, let's go ahead and get started. There's a couple that's already pre-built, you can see in system. With AOS 6.1, more of them are actually being added. But let's create one and show you how what it looks like.
Yeah, Paul, I think this is, like you said, this is one of the probably the least known features, but easily probably the most powerful feature that Prism Central has.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's just got overshadowed by all the bigger announcements within Nutanix.
Yep.
But I think this is one of the more powerful tools that you're going to use in your day-to-day operations. So again, you can set up alerts and events. I'm going to do a manual process so you can see the steps. So I'll go ahead and go to manual. I'm going to manipulate the VM, but you can manipulate down to the host and cluster as well. So the reason why it's called a playbook, you're going to actually create steps, kind of like scripting, but we'll do it in the front end for you. And the script just does it in the back end, and it'll run the script for you once you run the playbook. But then with the playbook, there's a lot already pre-built. And again, you can write your own scripts if you need to do even more deeper dive or unique scenarios. But you see, you can acknowledge the alert and send an email. I remember seeing Slack on here as well, so you can also send a Slack notification. I won't do so here in this demo because then I'll get 100 emails off of a demo. But more than likely, you want to start out by powering off your VM. Okay. Once the VM is powered off, you can add or remove whatever you like. So you can see here there's add CPU, add memory, expand your vdisk, etc. There's a lot already pre-built here. On today's demo, I'm just going to go ahead and add automatically add memory. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 GB of RAM each time that I run the playbook. I'm going to set up my parameters. I'm going to limit it at 5. So this is important so it doesn't keep adding and taking up all your memory, right? You want to set limits and parameters. So it's going to add 1 every time up to a maximum of 5 here in this demo. Cool. And then last but not least, we'll go ahead and power back on that VM. Yep, here it is. Okay, so once I have all the actions and the playbook all set, let's go ahead and save and close. And I'm just going to name it for me to easy to find it. I'll just call it Egroup memory add. Remember to enable, and let's save it. Cool. So I have that playbook xplay created. So how does it run? If you set it as an alert automated, it'll just run whenever it runs out of memory. I did a manual process, right? So there's certain scenarios you want to do manual as well. So the scenario I'm kind of showing here, let's say, for example, you have 100 VMs that you all need to add 1 gig of memory. Instead of logging to every VM separately and adding it, you can also do it all at once. Select all your VMs. So just imagine I have Egroup VM 200. I guess I could have created a couple more. But say just select which VM you want. Say you have 100 of these. Go ahead and go under Actions. Run Playbook. And the list of all your playbooks will be shown here. But I have one here that we just created earlier. And let's go ahead and run it. So I'll give it a couple seconds to kick off and run. But it should go ahead. Well, it's already powered off, but it should go ahead and add 1 more memory there for me, and I'll power on that VM. So again, imagine you have 100 of these. Instead of logging in individually, I'll just select which VMs I want. Run the playbook. And then we're off and running. Yep, so there we go. So it ran. You can see here it added 1 gig of memory. Remember, it was at 3 before. Now it's at 4. And it powered on my VM.
And Paul, one thing about the xplay that I think is really powerful as well is, sometimes we see certain features that are AHV only, right? Or certain features that are going to support kind of the be more focused into the Nutanix ecosystem. This xplay functionality works across whether it's Nutanix AHV or VMware, right? So I can also have these playbooks that are attaching to if I run vCenter. Right? I can have these playbooks that attach to vCenter and have Prism Pro monitoring, VMware VMs to do the exact same kind of configuration changes or alerting through xplay that we get that you demoed here, which is specifically on an AHV hypervisor, right? So it's powerful enough to understand that it's not just limited to AHV, but it works across across other hypervisors as well.
Yep, absolutely. You can see here, this is running AHV in this cluster, but you can run EXSI or Hyper-V. We can do the same thing with xplay. And again, you can write your scripts, so you can do even more than what I've shown here. I've had a couple of customers that did XPlay for their website. If their website gets a lot of traffic, a lot of users log into it at once, they can automatically add more load balancers or whatnot that they need for their website as well. So the possibilities are endless. Whatever you can imagine, you can write your scripts. You can add that to the automated XPlay there. So I think it's very powerful. Cool. Yeah, that's what I want to show you guys today. Any questions, concerns, comments, anything in the chat? If not, I'll pass it back to Mike and Dan.
Yeah, and there's two features I wanted to touch on that are a little harder to demo, of course, in a kind of the demo environment. One is going to be the application monitoring features of Prism Pro, right? Of being able to go out and have Prism gathering stats around like SQL Server, right? So being able to hit have Prism Pro or Prism Pro licensing feature. I'm not sure, Paul, if it actually shows up in the hamburger menu in the demo or not, but having Prism evaluating what or the performance of SQL Server, for example, for a SQL Server, anybody that looks at SQL Server regularly, being able to see what's your buffer pool size, your active connections that are currently hitting SQL Server, what's my lock wait time, things like that are specific from a performance analysis of SQL Server itself. So that's built into Prism through the Ultimate licensing. But also one of the other, I think, interesting features that it kind of, for me, goes with when I look at microsegmentation with Flow of understanding what's in my environment. So with Flow, I can see the network traffic, for example, right? I can see what's going east to west or what communications are happening, but I don't necessarily know what's out there. I just see network traffic. With Prism Ultimate as well, I get application discovery where it's going to discover what applications are out within my infrastructure, within those VMs and from the traffic that it's monitoring. So allowing you to kind of see not only from the network side, but then from the VM side, how often, and I can think of, several hundred situations I've gone through this where, I've got people deploying VMs, but I've got no clue what they're actually deploying. Right. So as you can, see here, from what Paul's showing on the screen, this is kind of that microsegmentation, the networking kind of visibility, looking and seeing what's going around our environment. But take this to another level and actually having Prism evaluating what software is installed inside our VMs and from an application discovery. Again, another very powerful feature. In the chat, I threw in kind of the 3 levels of licensing for Prism Central. So you've got our starter, you've got our pro, and you've got our ultimate. And each of those, of course, builds on one another with the ultimate being, of course, the ultimate licensing level. But you can see how these flow through together. So again, a lot of customers I work with, they might just start with starter because they just want to have that centralized cluster management across multiple clusters. But then as they either grow or mature with the platform, they see the value in Prism Pro and Prism Ultimate as they continue to grow, right? So one of the nice things I think Nutanix has also done from a licensing structure is historically it's been node-based, right? So if I had 3 nodes, I needed to buy 3 nodes of Prism Pro, for example. And as my environment grew to 4, I'd buy 1 more and so forth. But they've also switched it up a little bit to being core-based. So just like the rest of the licensing from the Nutanix platform, kind of the environment, I can now license Prism Pro or Prism Ultimate based on the number of cores in my environment. And I don't have to license every cluster exactly the same. I can have some more important clusters that might use Prism Ultimate features versus some clusters that might use Prism Pro and some that might use Prism Starter, right? Depending on what those workloads are. So if you think about maybe a dev environment, I don't really care about having Prism Pro or Prism Ultimate features monitoring or managing a dev environment, right? We don't really care so much about the dev environment, but for a prod or a very mission critical cluster, maybe I do want some of the advanced features. So I can mix and match my licensing, gives you a lot of great kind of flexibility there. Question in the chat, what's the max cluster supported in Prism Central?
There's no hard limit.
Yeah, there's no hard limit for the number of clusters that can be managed with Prism Central. One thing I'd say that as part of the maturity of Prism Central is we're still kind of, I'll use my words lightly here, we're still waiting for kind of a distributed or scale out capabilities for Prism Central, right? we've now got some abilities where we can fail Prism Central over between clusters, or some scale out where I can have, say a 3-node Prism Central deployed. Paul, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but I'd say with Prism Central, we're still missing a little bit of kind of full resiliency on Prism Central as a platform, being distributed either across multiple clusters. It's DR today, but not necessarily kind of a distributed platform. So if I have multiple clusters, how quick, again, the good thing about Prism Central is it's not in the data path. So if you lose Prism Central, you don't lose any, the core infrastructure isn't impacted, but we're seeing kind of the next evolution of Prism Central. We'll call it version 2, to kind of scale out the platform and make it a little bit more resilient from a usability and disaster recovery perspective.
Correct. Yeah, the Prism Central just runs as a VM, and again, it's managed your Prism element. If Prism Central does go down, you can still manage your environment through just logging into Prism element and then just rebuild Prism Central.
Yeah, so we're seeing that distributed kind of, I know now with more recent versions, I can now back up Prism Central to another cluster to have it quickly be restored. So the roadmap is good for Prism Central from that kind of distributed perspective, as it becomes more and more critical, right? As things move into Prism Central, where we really need to keep Prism Central up 24 hours a day, we're getting some of that resiliency built into the platform. So hopefully.
Yep. We'll keep you updated. I think we're going to build out 3 Prism Centrals coming up. I'm not sure if it's G8 yet or not. Instead of just having 1 Prism Central VM in your whole entire environment, we're going to build out 3 coming up here soon.
Yeah. So really the goal of today for everybody from the demo perspective was to kind of show you some advanced features of Prism Central and with the Prism Pro licensing. So hopefully you got a little bit of a taste for it. But the best part about it is if you're a Nutanix customer today, there's no reason not to deploy Prism Central, at least from an evaluation perspective. As you can see in Paul's demo up there, you get 90 days free of Prism Ultimate, so you can kick the tires on that application monitoring or application discovery features, and see where the value comes in for you, right? It might just be, again, depending on your workloads or the importance of it, maybe you just stay with Starter, or maybe the Prism Pro features and functionality do kind of make it make sense for you. So again, kind of just wanted to whet the appetite for some Prism Central updates today, and hopefully you guys found this valuable. Dan, I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate all that, Paul and Mike. That's a lot of good info, and thanks for some of the questions that we got there. So to kind of close out today, appreciate those of you that have stuck on. Like I said, we'll be recording this and throwing it up, so if you weren't able to catch everything, I'm sure being in IT, you probably had at least one phone call come in throughout this. If you haven't taken a look at Nutanix yet, Egroup, we have an entire assessment around digging into what you're currently doing in your infrastructure. If you're running 3-tier, if you're sitting on VxRail and, hey, it took us 3 months to set it up and we just want to look at something else. Really what our goal is with our data center modernization assessment is to evaluate the current state, capture your SLAs, capture your objectives, capture your ideal state if that's not where you're at, then build out a infrastructure solution. Nutanix is a huge piece of this, but sometimes there are other components like going to public cloud. So we loop in our expertise around Microsoft Azure, for example, and help kind of design that big strategy for you. And then the presentation of those findings back to you. Our goal is to help you capture all the costs that could come up in a modernization effort, such as, let's rebuild the data center. So everything from the network to, any security updates, any vendor consolidations, we aim to capture as much of that as possible to give you a real analysis around the technological impacts of modernization, but also the financial impacts of modernization. So if you have any questions on what we can do with this assessment, we'll be following up after this with some info and a link to the recording. But really, at any point, we're happy to help. If you know other organizations that might be interested in taking a look at this solution, or if you're interested in Nutanix but not quite ready for it, we do have some boot camps that we'll be releasing over the next couple of months focused on various aspects of Nutanix. And we also run these Nutanix at 9 sessions. So feel free to keep an eye out on additional sessions. Also, we're happy to talk one-on-one. So if you want to set some time aside, we can get Mike on the line and work with the team here at Egroup. We're more than happy to kind of dig in through this. But I think with that being said, unless there are any other questions that have popped up, I don't believe I'm seeing any. We can go ahead and call this one a day. Paul, thanks again for joining us. Your expertise is always appreciated. And Mike, as always, good to see you. We'll go jump on a few more of these with our customers here in a bit. But yeah, I think that's all we've got today for Nutanix at 9. We'll keep the line open for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I see some typing going on there, but other than that, thanks for the time and hope to see you on the next one.
Absolutely. Paul, thanks for everything.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks, guys.